Okay, this question, we're gonna go into pressure. A column of water is 675 feet in depth. What is the pressure in PSI at the bottom of the column? Now, before we get into this, I want to explain something. Let's say I have a lake, right? I have a lake, got a sailboat on it. It's a terrible, terrible drawing. But that lake, let's say that lake from the water surface to the bottom is 100 feet. Alternatively, let's say I have a cylinder and it's 1 foot in diameter and it's 100 feet in height, and we've filled it up with water, right? So this one is 100 feet from the top to the bottom. So this lake might be miles and miles wide and 100 feet deep. This cylinder is 1 foot in diameter, but it's 100 feet deep. So it doesn't matter how wide the body of water is, or the tank or the vessel that's holding the water. It doesn't matter how wide. What matters is how deep it is. They're both 100 feet deep. So the pressure at the bottom is going to be the same. Okay? That's an important fact to understand. I'm gonna go ahead and erase that. Get that out of the way. Is that right, baby? So, what is pressure? How do we measure pressure? When you look in your conversion tables or conversion factors on the ABC formula sheet, you're going to see that it says that 1 foot of water is, if you have 2.31 feet of water, it's equal to 1 PSI. The way that it's stated in there is 1 foot of water equals 0.433 PSI. That's the first thing you'll see. 1 foot of water equals 0.433 PSI. And this is how we write it. 1 foot of water equals 0.433 PSI. We know that if you have 2.31 feet of water, it equals 1 PSI. Okay, so that's what this represents. Now again, good advice I got from a fellow operator when I first started in the industry was pick one, learn how to solve using that one. You have a choice, and my choice is this one. I always use 0.433. Sometimes I have to multiply, sometimes I have to divide, but I always use the 0.433. And again, when I have a value that's less than 1, when there's no number to the left of the decimal, I always write the 0, the decimal, and then in this case 0.433, right? So we want to know the column of water is 675 feet in depth. What is the pressure in PSI at the bottom of the column? So I'm going to write the formula like this. PSI equals, now 675 feet in depth. I'm going to write that as 675 feet over 1. The foot is above the division line. My answer is going to be in PSI. So what do so I'm going to have to cross cancel. I got to get rid of that foot. And to do it, I'm going to look at this right here, 0.433. This is the one I use. And because foot is below the division line here, that allows me to cross cancel if I multiply. So I know I've got the depth, and let me just write it correctly here. The depth is 675 feet over 1. I'm going to multiply it by my conversion factor, 0.433 PSI over foot, right? That's going to allow me to cross cancel. I have feet over the division line here, and I have feet under the division line here. cancel that. I'm left with PSI, and that is the unit of measure I'm looking for. So if I take my calculator and I multiply 675 and 0.433, I'm going to get
292.275.
And I can go ahead and just round that to 292 PSI. You always want to go the most correct answer. That's the answer they're looking for. The one that's closest to that. Okay, a couple more questions to go. We're going to stick with pressure. A pressure gauge at the bottom of a storage tank reads 50 PSI. What is the water level in the tank in feet? As I discussed in my last problem that we just solved, I chose 0.433 PSI per foot. That's the one I use when I solve any type of pressure problem. So, pressure gauge, what is the water level? What is the water level in the tank in feet? So I want level in feet. So we know that the gauge at the bottom is 50 PSI. I'm going to rewrite 50 PSI PSI over 1. I'm trying to get feet. So if I write PSI is 50 PSI over 1, and this is the conversion factor that I want to use, and the PSI is above the division line here and above the division line there, then I can't cross cancel if I multiply. However, if I divide, I can cross cancel out the PSI because my answer is going to be in feet. So let's write this down first. 0.433 PSI over foot. And I know I'm going to divide because I need to get that 50 PSI to feet. Now the question is which one goes on top of the other, right? What am I gonna? So I think what I'm gonna do is, and I just wrote it down like this, but if I divide 0.433 PSI over foot by 50, I'm gonna get a really crazy number, right? It's 50 PSI. Now, think about 0.433, if you think about a dollar, 43 cents is pretty close to 50 cents. 50 cents is half of a dollar. So if I have 50 PSI, the water level must be double that or close to it. So it's going to be somewhere around 100 feet, right? So let me rewrite this. Let me write it like this. 50 PSI over 1. And we're going to divide that by 0.433 PSI per foot. Let's cross cancel. I've got PSI here, which is over the division line. And then I have PSI here over the division line, but there's a division line between them, which means I can cross cancel that out. I've got feet. That's the unit of measure I'm looking for. So let's take 50 and divide it by 0.433, and I'm going to get 115.47. So it's a little more than 100. See, I'm not the best math student in the world, but when I approach it like this, methodically, same way every time, I can get the answers, right? So the answer, if I round, is going to be about 115 PSI. Now, what would have happened if I divided 0.433 by 50? If I did it the wrong way, I'd get this really crazy number, 0.00866, which we know is, just by common sense, just by being in the industry, we know that 50 PSI is a lot more than 8/1000th of a foot.